Thank you. Amen. All right. So we're moving on to Genesis 10. This is pretty much two genealogies. But, I prayed to make it interesting, that the Holy Ghost would help me make it interesting. And, sometimes you are just getting through the story and getting through some dry parts of the Bible. That's just how it is. We talked about that a couple of sessions ago. And this is Genesis 10 and 11 that we're going to be doing. So I'm being merciful and getting through both genealogies in one shot here. So before last time I was speaking, we talked about Noah getting out there, God's blessings, His law and His covenant with Noah and the whole earth. Talked about having children, how God wants us to have children, especially as Christians. Because we have those disciples in our home, what better way to grow and teach disciples when they're with you 24/7, all right? And typically 24/7. If you're a homeschooler like me, they're there all day. They're there all evening, all night, so they're getting what we get. They're getting things from church. We teach them things. We help them memorize stuff from the Bible. And they have a way better chance. The odds are better for them to become a great disciple for the Lord. And that's the purpose that God gives us children anyways, Christians, is that you get children not because you want social success through your kids. You can live vicariously through your kids and be so proud of them because they got like some CEO job in New York or something like that. Why would you want that anyway? Because then they're far away. You can't see them. Or you want them to be some cellist or something like that or whatever. That's not the focus. The focus is we want to raise kids for serving Christ. That's why the Lord gives us kids and He wants us to have kids and not, just stop at one. He wants us to have more kids. And I'm not blaming anybody if they only have one or they have none, but that is what the Bible says. And we were getting through the story, and we got to the story about what Ham did to his father after Noah got drunk and became unclothed. And we related that to a story about it's teaching about discretion. How you need to have discretion in your life, and you don't need to be blabbing everybody's business to everybody, whether it be fact or fiction. Have discretion. If things are serious enough, you still practice discretion. It's a high premium God puts on a discreet person. God talks about good kings doing their business discreetly. Okay? Women that are quiet and meek in their spirit, being discreet, not blabbermouths and loudmouths about people's business and busybodies. Okay? That's what the Bible teaches. Not Baptist culture. That's what the Bible teaches. Okay? What culture you are, it doesn't matter. The Bible transcends all those things. The Bible's laws aren't for white people in America named Baptists. They're for everyone that calls upon the name of Christ. Now, let's read the chapter. We're going to read the whole chapter. And it's a bunch of names that I have trouble pronouncing. So bear with me. So let's start in verse 1. And if you want to follow along, that's fine. If you want to take a little nap, yeah.
What chapter did you say?
Chapter 10 of Genesis. Sorry if I didn't make that clear. And if you want to take a nap during this time, that's just fine, because they're just names. There is one cool story in here, and I'm making it interesting. I'm using you're going to learn some history and how things are connected in the Bible. Don't worry, I'm not just going to read some names and we're going to sound them out together or nothing like that. Okay, you'll learn that in first grade. All right, so verse 1. Now these are the generations of the sons of Noah, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and unto them were sons born after the flood. The sons of Japheth, Gomer, and Magog, and Madai, and Javan, Tubal, and Meshach, and Tiras. And the sons of Gomer, Ashkenaz, Riphath, and Togarmah. And the sons of Javan, Elisha, and Tarshish, Kittim, and Dodanim. Now, if you've read the Bible a little bit more than just, a couple verses here, maybe you've read Proverbs, maybe you're doing a proverb of the day since it's the new year, and you got 30, days to do the book of Proverbs or something like that, but you've actually read through the Bible. You're seeing these names, and these names actually become names of nations, names of cities. Okay, like I think Gomer, Magog. Okay, you got Tarshish there. Okay, Kittim, or they become an Ashkenite or something like that. It becomes a tribe name. Verse 4. And the sons of we were before. Verse 5. Well, I'm not going to try and repeat anything. Verse 5, by these were the isles of the Gentiles divided in their lands, everyone after his tongue, after their families and their nations. And by the way, we're reading through these generations, right? And you will see, we'll get to a name called Peleg, and I'll get to it, where the nations were divided, okay, because of God confounding their languages because they tried to create a new world order back in the day called the Tower of Babel. We'll get to that, just to give you some context. Verse 6, and the sons of Ham, Cush, and Mizraim, and Phut, and Canaan, and the sons of Cush, Seba, and Havilah, and Sabta, and Ramah, and Sabteka, and the sons of Ramah, Sheba, and Dedan. And Cush begat Nimrod, that's a familiar name. He began to be mighty one in the earth. He was a mighty hunter before the Lord. Wherefore it is said, even as Nimrod, the mighty hunter before the Lord. Now, wherever that is said, it's said somewhere. It was just said the verse before that, but maybe cultures said that. Maybe people said that about him. Verse 10, and the beginning of the kingdom was Babel, and that's Nimrod's kingdom. And Erech, and Akkad, and Calneh in the land of Shinar. So that's the Chaldean, Babylonian Shinar. That's the Chaldeans. That's Babylon. Verse 11, out of the land went forth Asher and builded Nineveh, and the city Rehoboth and Calah, and Rezin between Nineveh and Calah, the same as a great city, Nineveh. And Mizraim begat Ludum, and Enamim, and Lehabim, and Naphtahim, and Pathrusim, and Casluhim, out of whom was Philistim, and Caphthorim. That's a lot of M's. 15. And Canaan begat Sidon, after Sidon his firstborn in Heth, and the Jebusite, and the Amorite, and the Girgazite. Remember the names. Remember those names as we go down this sermon. Remember those names. And the Hivite, and the Archite, and the Sinite, and the Arvadite, and the Zamorite, and the Hamathite. And afterward were the families of the Canaanites spread abroad. And the border of the Canaanites was from Sidon, as thou comest to Gerar, and Gaza. Where's Gaza? Big name nowadays, because there's war there. Okay, it's by Israel. As thou goest unto Sodom and Gomorrah and Admah and Zeboim, even unto Lasha, these are the sons of Ham after their families, after their tongues, in their countries, and in their nations. Verse 21, unto Shem, also the father of all the children of Eber, the brother of Japheth, the elder, even to him were children born. The children of Shem, Elam, Asher, Arphaxad, Lud, and Aram. The children of Aram, Uz, and Hol, and Gether, and Mash. And Arphaxad begat Salah, and Salah begat Eber. And unto Eber was born two sons, and one was Peleg, for in his days was the earth divided, and his brother's name was Joktan. So we'll get to that portion there. Verse 26, and Joktan begat Almadad, and Sheleph, and Hazar Meveth, and Jerah, and Hadoram, and Uzal, and Diklah, and Obal, and Abimael, and Sheba, and Ophir, and Havilah, and Jobab. All these were the sons of Joktan. And they were dwelling from Misha, as thou goest into Sephar, a mount of the east. These are the sons of Shem after their families, after their tongues, in their lands, after their nations. These are the families of the sons of Noah after the generations in their nations. And by these were the nations divided in the earth after the flood. Whew. All right. First, gauntlet. That's just how I sound it out. I'm not trying to speak in tongues up here. That's just how I sound it out. I know people that are really smart in languages and they say it different, and I'm just like, you know what? I'm just gonna let it roll off the tongue as it comes naturally. And if it sounds weird, it sounds weird. That way I don't get stuck trying to sound it out in front of you, and waste time.
There you go.
But anyways, so we see Japheth. So we go back. We see Japheth having a son named Ashkenaz. And this part where Ashkenaz is, if you heard of the Ashkenazis, okay, there's a culture of Jews that are called the Ashkenazi Jews, okay? This is the Caucasus Mountains. This is Eastern Russia, okay? This is Germany, Poland, Eastern Europe, part of these places, and up north there too. And then Ham has a descendant named Mizraim, which is an ancient Hebrew word that means the people of Egypt. Okay, so that's Egypt. Mizraim is another name for Egypt. So his sons went into northern Africa. So you have south and east and northeast too. With those two brothers. And Cush was a son of Ham, begat Nimrod, which is where we had the land of Shinar, Babylon. And from Ham we have Assur, which built cities in like Nineveh, so that's Assyria or Iraq. And of course, Canaan, so Lebanon, Syria, Jordan, Gaza, Israel area. That becomes that Israel area. Abraham travels through there, and that's where God's going to give them the promised land. But through Canaan, we get the Amorites, the Jebusites, Sodom, Gomorrah, places that turned out to be so wicked. If you remember, when Joshua and Moses were being spoken to by God, It's like, these are the people that you're going to drive out, and they come from the lineage of Ham. Okay, so places that turned out to be so wicked they had to be driven out before Israel when Joshua was the general. You know, Sodom and Gomorrah. What happened to them? Smoked. Okay? Then Shem, in verse 22 here, it says, the children of Shem, Elam, Asher, and Arphaxad, Lud, and Aram. His first sons and their sons. Aram had Uz. Now, if you remember a famous Bible story, who was from the land of Uz? Not Dorothy or anything like that. Not the Wizard of Uz. Not the Wizard of Oz. Okay, it's Uz. Who knows? Maybe that's where they got the name. Because only the Bible has these strange names, right? Now, who is a famous Bible character from the land of Uz? Anybody? Want to take a guess at that? It's Job. Job was from the land of Uz. He's the son of Shem. That's a cool little connection there. And I think that you see that lineage in 1 Chronicles too. Because 1 Chronicles, this is why it's such a hard book to read, 1 Chronicles, in the first 9 chapters, because it just goes through all this again. Okay? You're not over it. It's not done here. You get to do this again. Isn't that nice? All right? All right, so now through his lineage, we get Peleg. Peleg in verse 25 here, and it says, unto Eber was born 2 sons, the name of one was Peleg, for in his days was the earth divided, and his brother's name was Joktan. So, in the days of Peleg, in verse 25, when the earth was divided, as the language were confounded. We'll read about that in chapter 11. And in chapter 10, we had the language being created by God of the Tower of Babel, but Peleg is the great-great-great-grandfather, I think that's 4 greats, or maybe 5, of Abraham. Okay, we have Peleg and his son Rehu, Serug, Nahor, Terah, then Abraham. So let's move on to some action happening in chapter 11. Let's go to 11. Got a little bit of a connection there and some geological history there. Let's read 1 through 9 in chapter 11. And it says, and the whole earth was of one language, the whole earth, and of one speech. And it came to pass, as they journeyed from the east, that they found a plain in the land of Shinar, which is what in the future? The Chaldeans, Babylon. And they dwelt there. And they said to one another, go to, let us make brick and burn them thoroughly. And they had brick for stone, and slime had they for mortar. And they said, go to, let us build us a city and a tower, whose top may reach unto heaven. Let us make us a name, lest we be scattered abroad upon the face of the whole earth. And the Lord came down to see the city and the tower, which the children of men builded. This is a Trinity drop here. And the Lord said, behold, the people is one, and they have all one language, and this they begin to do, and now nothing will be distrained from them, which they have imagined to do. Go to, let us go down. Okay, let us go down. That's the Trinity. Lost my place. Verse 7, and there confound their language, and they may not understand one another's speech. So the Lord scattered them abroad from thence upon the face of all the earth, and they left off to build the city. Therefore is the name of it called Babel, because of the Lord did there confound the language of all the earth, and from thence did the Lord scatter them abroad upon the face of all the earth. So we can see here, and I remember back, I think it was 2 years ago when I first started preaching again in Sunday school, I was doing kind of a little bit overcomplicated thing about Daniel. I was going through Daniel. If anybody remembers that, maybe you don't. Maybe it was a blur. Okay, and that's okay because it was some pretty deep stuff I was going into with Daniel. And there's a spirit of Babylon. There is a spirit in man to make and create a one world order. Okay. Now, back then it was easy for them because we're all one language. We're all one, we're all one people. We all speak the same to everyone. Why don't we just make one big nation? Makes sense in the human mind, doesn't it? But to God, he does not want that. Now, if you think about why God doesn't want a megachurch, why does God not want just one big, huge church with a pope calling the shots, okay? Why? Because a little leaven leaveneth the whole lump. That's why we have independent fundamental Baptist churches, how it's laid out in the Bible. We don't have some archdiocese telling us what to do, who's being told to do something by a cardinal, who's being told to do something by a other guy, pope. No. We read the Bible. The Bible is our pope, okay? I'm just going to say that. Don't think that's blasphemous. I'm just trying to make a point. The Bible is what is the directing force in the New Testament local independent fundamental Baptist church. And if this one goes bad, other churches won't be affected by it. Okay, it's not going to trickle in there because we're the head of the Baptist Church Union or whatever you want to call it or something, or a conglomerate. Okay, think about the Southern Baptist Convention. They all just follow what the main guy says. Okay, or else they're out of the convention. At least I think that's how it works, okay? If a Catholic church all of a sudden just said, you know, we don't need to do the Eucharist, they wouldn't be getting any funding from the Vatican or anything like that. They would stop being a Catholic church, right? And they would probably die. Or maybe they would live more. maybe God would revitalize them. But anyways, if like this, some preacher came up here, started preaching some false doctrine, this church may die, but others would live. Okay, and that's a good picture of new local testament churches. And if we go back to the Tower of Babel and their one language, this one world order, it's a foreshadowing of the distant future beyond today even, where the whole world will be one government, will be one currency, will be one religion. Maybe not one language, but who knows? You know, they're coming out with universal translators now. Okay, where you just talk and it just translates whatever you want it to translate into, whoever, Chinese, whatever. You can just speak English and your phone's just like, okay, I'll just feed that back to the other guy. It's an app now, which is super cool, but you know, one world religion, one world currency, one world government, one world political system, okay? And that's the Antichrist kingdom. That is short-lived, just like the Tower of Babel. Okay, that's the kingdom, that's the political side of that. Then the mark of the beast, that's the currency, okay? And the worship of the beast in the Antichrist as God is the religion of the world. And if you don't bow down and worship the beast, a decree, an executive order, so to speak, is passed that if you don't do that and get the mark, you're put to death. And what we also see is a metaphor from the Tower of Babel for trying to work our way to heaven. What are they trying to do with this tower? Okay, just trying to get good signal or something like that? No, they're trying to build it to heaven. And are they actually trying to like break through that dimensional barrier? No, it's a symbol of their pride, how we can build something to heaven, we don't need God. Okay? We can build our way to heaven. Now, I can't remember which McCoy brother mentioned it, but I agree that there really isn't, they're not trying to actually break the threshold into heaven. That's not going to happen. But it was more of a symbolic thing to say, like a skyscraper. Like, we don't actually scrape the sky, okay? It's just a tall building. That's just a name for a tall building. And this is the kingdom of Nimrod, the hunter, the son of Ham. But think about the symbolism of building your good works to achieve the glory of God. We come short. We're cut down. And that's what God did. It got cut down. It got stopped anyways. And think about what they did to the bricks in verse 3 of 11. Let us make brick and burn them thoroughly. People want to get, they're doing such work for the Lord to get saved. That's what they think they're doing. And they'll refine it. They'll make sure they're just like every T is crossed, every I is dotted, just like the Pharisees. They'll do everything just so right. Okay, but it's not enough. Jesus said, your righteousness has to exceed the righteousness of the Pharisees, or you will not enter into the kingdom of God. He's not saying you got to be that righteous. He's just saying it's impossible. Because he says, look at these guys. Look at the Pharisees. I mean, you can't get more law-abiding citizen than these guys. Yes, they're hypocrites, but they're all about the law. Okay? Now, you have to be better than them, though. You can't just be clean when it comes to sins of the body, right? You have to be clean with the sins of the mind. And I remember going through that, that's the Sermon on the Mount, where Jesus says, well, you got to cut out your eye and cut your arm off, or cut your hand off in order for you to stop sinning with those things. He's not saying to actually do that, because no one does, not even super righteous people that still sin. They don't do that. Because it's not just the fact that you got to cut your hand off and you pluck your eye out. You got to get a lobotomy. You have to. You can't even be able to think, or else you'll sin. Because the thought of foolishness is sin. That's how impossible it is for us to work our way to heaven. Okay? Build all those fancy bricks you want, line them all in a row and build this fancy tower. It's come short, so short. It's futile when it comes to building our way to heaven. And another thing about this tower, God mentions in verse 6. And the Lord said, behold, the people is one, and they all have one language, and this thing they begin to do. And now nothing will be restrained from them which they have imagined to do. It's an interesting passage. Now you try and bring this into today. Our technology is fantastic, isn't it? Our technology is incredible. It would seem like black magic to a person in the medieval ages. They'd be like, you're a witch, kind of dunk you until you die, all right? Or we burn you because of that smartphone. But now we all have them. Everyone has a smartphone. Everyone's connected. We have these portals where we can just communicate with somebody across the other side of the planet. It's crazy. And in Daniel, it says, knowledge shall be increased in the last days, and people shall go to and fro. Going to and fro, think about how you can just circumnavigate the planet in like a day in a plane. If you had one of those big jumbo planes. Maybe they had to whatever. You know what I mean? We can travel so far, so fast. Just think, my stepdad, because I would whine, are we there yet? He'd slow down to like 5 miles an hour. I'd be like, this is horse carriage speed. Now we're going to go this fast. We're a quarter mile away from home. It's going to take a while. But he would eventually speed up. But the thing is, we have advanced so far, even when it comes to traveling. And our technology grows exponentially every week, every month, every year. The chips get smaller, can hold more data. They want to integrate these things into our biology, into our minds, into our bodies. Okay? They're starting now to be able to grow whole human organs in labs, kidneys, ears, noses, lips, if you need those things. Need a new pair of lips. Yeah, it's things that look real nowadays too with AI. They look real, but they're digital. They can look so real. With those multi-billion-dollar AI softwares, they can make things look exactly like real life. And you need highly sophisticated software to detect it. Okay? Then now we got lab meat. Okay? Yum! Lab meat. It just thinking about it, just like some slimy, gooey meat circle. And the thing we do with genetics. Genetics has come so far in the last 20 years. I remember back in the day hearing about it in school. They were mapping the genome or mapping the DNA. And it took so much people to map the DNA. And now we just map everything. But now we genetically edit things with things called CRISPR and things that go in and edit the DNA to make it so you have different color hair or different color this or different that. I'm not sure anybody does that. Maybe they do if they're really, really rich. But that's possible. And I'm not one to believe that all the technology that we see today is all we have. I believe that they have stuff that is so far advanced, but they don't want to bring it out because why? It's lucrative to keep us in this spot where everything needs to be disposable. You need to buy a new one. You need to buy, like the PS5 kids, okay? I don't know if you guys got one, maybe you're Xbox guys. I don't know. But I'm sure that they have something so far advanced already, but they just gotta lead you along so they can make money. Okay? If they just give you the best thing now, well then that's the best thing for 20 years. And they're not making money for 20 years. You know what I'm saying? So you're suckers. No, I'm just joking. Nothing wrong with video games, right, Frank? Frank, hello. All right, so. But think about robotics, too. Robotics. Anyone know what Boston Dynamics is? Anybody? Well, the thing is, they have a terrifying robot that can do like a triple 360 backflip and land on its feet while it's carrying something. Imagine that thing chasing you through the woods because you didn't get the mark, okay? Imagine that thing chasing you. It's scary. But like I said, the Bible says nothing will be restrained from them which they have imagined to do. I believe that if we can imagine it as humans, we can achieve it. Science fiction becomes reality eventually. Now, within our realm of reality too. I'm not saying we're going to like get to heaven or anything like that and like invade heaven. No. But I believe if we were to, let's say, do this thing called transhumanism, we want to get technology into our bodies so we can live forever. I believe if God were not to intervene like he did with Babel, we would get to a point where we could live very long lives in the flesh. Maybe not eternally, but very long lives. I believe God will halt that. That won't come to pass. That's an interesting verse to ponder on. Well, we're not restrained from anything that we can imagine. We can do pretty much anything with technology nowadays. It's pretty crazy. So let's move on. So we see this kingdom split up in different languages. I believe this is when the Great Migration happened. So we're all one nation, Babel, but we're split, okay? And we get these different languages, and I believe this is when the Great Migration happened. You have people that traveled way far. They're not just like around this area, okay, this big city, this big nation with one language. Now they can't, like somebody's probably speaking Chinese and probably looking for the other guy that sounds like them and be like, hey, guy, let's go do our own thing. Or the guy speaking like, Russian or whatever the language was back then, because languages evolve, they change. I know I use that word, but it's okay. That's a good evolve. But like English, that evolved from Latin and all these things. Spanish evolved from Latin and Greek and stuff like that. But anyway, if you think about the earliest Chinese dynasty, okay, called the Xia dynasty, they say that started probably about 2070 BC. And if you do a little research, that's around the time Babel would have happened. Okay? And you see all these other places around the world too. Early Mongolian and Indian dynasties starting around this time, give or take a century, 2-3 centuries, because it, of course, would take time to get everything organized. But the Celts, the Germanic, the Slavic nations, okay, they're a little ahead, more not really as old as 2000, but they're getting there, right? Because that'd be maybe a little harder to travel up there. North and Central America. The Mayan civilization is supposed to be 2,000 years old. It's like one of the oldest things on these two continents, North and South America. And where would they have come from? They probably did. Either they took boats or something, or they got through from Russia to Alaska, and they came down here, and they started building civilizations. I read a book called Castaway, and it's about a conquistador that gets shipwrecked in Florida, and it's a real witness account. It's an eyewitness account. This is his memoir that he, his little thing that he wrote is his notes, and they compile it into like a memoir. And he said he was talking to these natives, like, what are these mounds built? What are these structures built? And they didn't know. Those natives didn't know. They were like, we don't know who did it. Okay, so apparently they built something, but there was a famine, pestilence, there was bad weather or something, and they moved more south or something like that. Who knows what happened? But they didn't even know where it came from. There's a civilization called Karl Supe that even goes back further than the dating of the Mayan civilization. And it's so crazy what those conquistadors probably actually saw. Okay. Now, when we discovered those Mayan pyramids, they were overgrown and everything. No one was really using them, okay, except for the Aztecs and the Incans. They discovered people were getting sacrificed and their hearts were getting ripped out, so it would rain. But that's when the Great Migration happened. Okay, people went South Africa. People went east. People went north and west. They spread out because these languages were divided. And they say, oh, well, we found an artifact that's like 20,000 years old. That's not true. And I'm not going to get into it, but the dating, way they date things, it's favoritism dating. They date it like 20 times and they find the oldest thing and that's the one they pick. That's how they date stuff. Because they'll find it, they'll carbon date it, and it'll be like, well, we got one that says 2,000, but then we have one that we tested it and it says 50,000. We'll go with the oldest one because of why? It fits their narrative, it fits their agenda. I learned that way back in the day about carbon dating. I'm not going to get into that because it's a little complicated. But, they lie to us about that stuff because they can't just be like truthful about it and be like, actually, civilization isn't as old as we think. But if you think about it, all writing, all language, all building structures, all those colossal things, I think I spoke about this a couple of classes ago, they all pop up around the same time. Strange, isn't it? How we just all of a sudden can speak languages. And they're different languages too. That doesn't just happen in a day. Naturally. No, God had to do it. So last part, of chapter 11. We have a little bit of time, and I didn't even think I was going to get this far with time, but last part of 11 is the ancestry of Abram or Abraham from Shem. So let's read that quick, because next week we'll be getting into the first patriarch, the father of faith, Abraham. So let's read from chapter 10 all the way to 32. It says, bear with me. These are the generations of Shem. Shem was 100 years old and begat Arphaxad 2 years after the flood. And Shem lived, and he begat Arphaxad 500 years, and begat sons and daughters. And Arphaxad lived 35 years, and begat Salah. And Arphaxad lived after he begat Salah 403 years, and begat sons and daughters. And Salah lived 30 years, and begat Eber. And Salah lived after he begat Eber 403 years, and begat sons and daughters. And Eber lived 430 years, and begat Peleg. And Eber lived after he begat Peleg 430 years, and begat sons and daughters. And Peleg lived 30 years, and begat Rehu. And Peleg after he begat Rehu 209 years, and begat sons and daughters. Rehu lived 230 years, and begat Serug. Rehu lived after he begat Serug 207 years, and begat sons and daughters. And Serug lived 30 years, and begat Nahor. And Serug lived after he begat Nahor 200 years, and begat sons and daughters. And Nahor lived 29 years, and begat Terah. And Nahor lived after he begat Terah 119 years, and begat sons and daughters. And Terah lived 70 years, and begat Abram, Nahor, and Haran. Now these are the generations of Terah. Terah begat Abram, Nahor, and Haran. And Haran begat Lot. And Haran died before his father Terah in the land of his nativity in Ur of the Chaldees. And Abram took Nahor, and Abram and Nahor took them wives. The names of Abraham's wife was Sarai. The name of Nahor's wife was Milcah, and the daughter of Haran, the father of Milcah, and the father of Iscah. But Sarai was barren, she had no child. And Terah took Abraham his son, and Lot, the son of Haran, and his son's son, and Sarai his daughter, and his law, and his son Abraham's wife, and they went forth with them from Ur of the Chaldees to go into the land of Canaan, and they came into Haran and dwelt there. And the days of Terah were 205 years, and Terah died in Haran. Whew! So much. That's so much stuff. But, you can even find stuff in there. There's stuff in there for us, okay, even if it's just to test our patience. All right, but yeah, we're going to get into the father of Abraham. This is where we get into the first patriarch. That's what they call him anyway. He's the father of faith he's the father of believing in the gospel when it comes to having so much faith about God's promise and his situation, his circumstances where they weren't having a kid and they had him in well old age, beyond what they call geriatric these days. And I was making fun of that last week, but yeah, Abraham and his test also is a test of how we should walk in faith too. That's why he's called the father of faith. That's all I have for you with Genesis 10 and 11. We got through that. And then it's going to be cool stories for a while.